Thank you. Please stand by.
It really around that core is relevance and transfer, trying to drive meaning for the learner or the performer, the information that they're getting or the instruction they're getting, tying it back to what is meaningful for them. And so from one of the key levers we're going to be talking about today is how design and the approach can drive that user adoption, and wrapping it really around trying to hit that target for transfer and relevance to the end user. So I wanted to kind of start off here, and I think we have actually this clip here I wanted to share with you guys, and we were going to try and pull the bandwidth for this, but I did want to give you guys the opportunity to join and watch this clip for up to about the first 2 minutes. But wanted to share with this is a piece that I don't know how many of you may have seen, but it starts to really think about how we change the definition, or how we're thinking about what is mobile today versus what is mobile in the future, and trying to set up and establish a very fluid strategy on what we're trying to achieve. So I'm going to try and play it here, but I'd like you guys, if you're comfortable joining along. I think, Eric, you're going to post the link for the panelists, or for the folks at home to join along with. So we're just going to take a couple of minutes here and play this clip and share with you guys this piece. So I'm hoping it'll play a little bit here in the background as it's loading up. So Eric, can you post that out on the chat window for the folks to join with and see it as well?
Yes, it's there.
It is? Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it about here, and of course you guys can continue to watch the rest of the clip. But the reason we wanted to share this initial clip is really because it comes into the bigger picture of what are we thinking about the fluid concept of what mobile is and what it means to us. And so initially a lot of the conversation has been talking about mobile is around a device or something you carry around with you. And what we're looking at in the future and how we think about user adoption or that relevance back to them is that in the future, the human may be the mobile element and the environment is what becomes the information and the instruction and the connection around us. So as we're thinking about ways in which we're connecting and getting people to use it, it's around that utility as we're going. So I just wanted to kind of step back and say, as we're struggling to try and think about how are we getting content and information and instruction into these little hand devices, the world around us and how we're defining mobile is rapidly changing. So Eric, I didn't know if you wanted to share a little bit more with that. And of course, there's more out there. There's actually a second day made of glass out there. If you search, Corning has updated and brought something out that's a little more recently as well, but it's ever changing. And some of the things you see in here are actually out on the market today in some features. So Eric, I'm sorry, did you want to join and share anything?
Yeah, so just an interesting thought. I actually showed that video with my kids, and you know, their response versus what probably a lot of us thought to us, oh, you know, we were probably thinking, I can't wait till that's available, or is that really going to happen? And my kids' immediate response was, can we get one? They are so accustomed to this mode that we're in now. You know, and I'll date myself here a little bit. You know, a lot of what we're seeing with mobile, right? We've seen in our professional lives. Well, they've grown up with this since day zero. So I think this concept, you know, as we've all been talking about the many generations in the workforce, the generations who are growing up with this technology don't even recognize how huge of a leap this concept was.
Yeah, and you're talking about, I shared this with my wife, and of course we have a 3-year-old, and while I think she was excited about the possibilities, but as a mother, she was thinking, how many fingerprints would I have to clean as we go through this, as a world made of glass? She was thinking about it. But yeah, I think it's that what we're changing is in all the worlds of experience that we have as the digital natives versus the digital immigrants, as we're grasping our way through the interacting with the world around us and the role that mobile plays. It's constantly fluid. So I wanted to, you know, bookend this example with another example of something a little more today, or actually recent event, and it showed a high impact use of an app that actually delivered with us. So Eric, did you want to introduce this clip?
Yeah, so this is, we won't play this one because, you know, it's basically a follow-up set of interviews with this individual, but the story is pretty amazing. I encourage you to go out and take a look at it. In short, there was an aid worker who was down in Haiti when the earthquake happened, and he was in a hotel in Port-au-Prince, and the entire structure just collapsed, and you guys know the majority of that earthquake story, but this individual, you know, was alive and was trapped in the hotel, literally trapped for days. And you know, the amazing thing was, you know, what he was able to do, just given the fact that he had this mobile device with him. Everything from using a flashlight capability to navigate towards a stairwell. He took pictures and then could illuminate because he had lost his glasses, so that, you know, therefore he could focus better with the use of the camera in the back of the lens type on the phone, as well as, and then the most important part was, you know, he was injured, compound fracture, I believe, and knew enough first aid to probably, you know, stabilize himself, but, you know, realized that he might be there for days and didn't want to do more harm than good. So he actually had, by chance, because he didn't have Wi-Fi at the time because of the earthquake, a first aid app that he had downloaded that he was able to refer to, and actually, you know, did the right things the best he could in that situation, and ended up surviving and being rescued. So the story is one of those great, you know, good life type stories. But the phone and what he was able to do with that, you know, was actually transformational.
Yeah, and in that particular instance, it was really using to build upon that basic knowledge of basic first aid and being able to add to it for the advanced first aid to be able to save himself and get back to his family. So it's really bookending the future of where things are going, but also a very credible implementation of mobile as we see it today. And talk about user adoption, there's a strong testimonial in how that person was able to integrate it and show value with it. So we encourage you to go out and check it out. So in thinking as we look forward, driving the use or the utilization or the adoption of this, that we first need to think about what's happening in the workforce, what's happening in the workplace, what is changing in the way in which we interact with each other and try and learn and perform, and this, at the same time, the rise of the features of mobile devices and this confluence of all these things coming together. So four trends that we're seeing, and this is actually pulled together with Marcia Connor, and it was brought together in her book, Guide to Transforming Organizations Through Social Media. But in paraphrasing, there's four elements around that. It's a growing need for an agile workforce. The top-down approach of an organization being able to do the learning organization from the top and say, only the top leaders will go out, they'll figure out how the environment is changing, will drive strategy and push it all the way down. That strategy doesn't seem to be working as the pace of information, the devices, the environment, everything is increasing its acceleration and how that's changing or evolving. So the people that are at the point of performance, at the point of that learning need, they're the ones that have to assess what do I need in order to be able to perform. So driving it out to the front where the person is, that's where that agile workforce is getting it. They're getting the information they need, they're taking into account what's in the environment and being able to drive it towards their personal performance needs. The next one is emerging expectations from a shifting workforce demographic, and what we're looking at is obviously we talk a lot about the boomers through the millennials and the next generation that's coming in, and it's not saying that boomers who may be exiting the workforce don't use technology or use it differently, but they're interacting with the other groups in a collaborative fashion in very different ways. So they're expecting not just how the organization provides them information, but how they're going to gather that information to learn and perform with others. The increasing reach of customized technology. So no longer is it one technology or one piece of software fits everybody. I think probably the most ubiquitous example of that would be Amazon, where it's adaptive and provides you with information based upon a prior history or knowledge that is developed about you and the way in which it interacts. So you're also seeing ways to kind of change the tools around us to meet our specific performance needs, and then expanding capabilities for performer networking, which gets back to now it's not just being able to connect with the people that are physically in the space next to me, but it's being able to connect across geography, across expertise spaces, across needs where you're trying to tackle a problem and bring a solution to bear. So right now, mobile and the technology is bringing a lot more communication strategies than we've had in the past. Just in the immediate workforce, you think of you got email, phone, IM, video chat. Those are just four off the top of my head in ways in which you now can communicate with another individual. And then if you add in the social learning sites, which give you both synchronous and asynchronous options, there's a whole range of ways in which we can connect and share. Eric, did you want to share anything else about this?
Yeah, I think I'll address some of those later when we talk about how mobile can affect learning as well.
Okay. So three mashups that are shaping how people are learning and performing. We're seeing a change in the roles. So no longer was it this social learning contract between the organization and the individual learner or performer, where I basically learn from you. You tell me what I need to know. You provide me everything I need in order to perform. We're seeing a shift or a blending or a merging of all these roles. So now you see that you have the role of the learner, the role of the curator, the collaborator, the moderator, the contributor, or the performer. And you could be almost all of these at any given point. So it's all about being able to set up the individual and the organization to leverage these roles, to understand how to perform those roles and how to connect with each other. We're seeing a change with functions and hierarchies, so we're seeing more cross-functional opportunities and cross-hierarchical collaborations within organizations. And that's really trying to draw together to solve the unique problems that individual or units of performers are facing in an organization. And the last one is really blending together content, context, and relevance. And so This is where, the shift is from a more traditional approach of saying, I will tell you why this information is important. I will tell you how to use this information, or I will go into a heavy design mode and it's one for everybody. What we're finding is that you need to be able to open up your information and your instructions so that learners themselves or users of this information through mobile pieces can create that personal relevance and pull together and reassemble discrete bits of content and combine them so that they can apply them in their specific performance context. So supporting this is and helping fuel some of this or respond to this is the evolution of the mobile device. And mobile, in all honesty, the concept of mobile and mobile devices has been around for 40 or 50 years. I mean, it's not an absolutely brand new concept, but what we're seeing is the technology has enabled the concept of the mobile device to do more than it ever has before. So just, right now, just 5, existing features on almost every smartphone. You have an element of a GPS, which lets you know where you're at. Location awareness, touch. It's intimate. It's interactive. I'm finger swipes and hot points and all that. Being able to interact with it and then use it in your space relative to where you are. Sensors, physical, the ability to move the device at a certain speed. It'll be able to determine how fast you're moving. Are you tilting it? Contacts. So all of a sudden, within a single device, you're bringing together your personal and your social contacts, and it can store all that information within the context of these other features. And the last one is really getting to portability, which means that I can use it and I can access it exactly where I am, at the point of performance, at the point of need, or at the point of learning. So in the next section, what we want to do is just kind of quickly identify some of the examples around, GPS and location aware. And so what we tried to do is pull some things from some locations that are a little more standard. So you guys probably have seen some of these, but the interesting one, like about the Londinium Street Museum, is that so if you're in London and you look at the map in the lower right-hand corner, you see all these little dots or points of interest. So if you have your iPad or your tablet with you, and at that point you can actually pull up imagery or video that overlays over what you would see with current day London. So in the image in the upper right-hand corner, if you're physically in that location at London, you would actually see what was happening during the Roman era in London at that time, and the same with the gladiators in the lower left-hand corner. So it's combining where you are with information relevant at that point. The next one is touch, where it's intimate and interactive, and there are tons of examples of this, but Theodore Gray's The Elements is one that I always like to bring out. So this is basically an exploratory approach to understanding the elements. So you'd be able to click on any of the menu items here on the left and then select an element, and then as you go into it, you can interact with it. Now this right here is actually a 3D rotating image. So with your finger, you can do a finger swipe and rotate it, and you can actually it's very visually rich, but and one I like is actually the mercury, because it's actually a liquid blob that as you tilt your tablet, it'll actually run around the screen. So again, it's intimate, it's interactive. You're exploring content in a very different way. It's not just text. It's a way to interact with the imagery. Physical intelligence, the night sky. There's several of these type of apps. So like the night sky, the ability to basically hold your tablet like you see in the left-hand screen here, hold it up to the sky, and be able to get information to map back to what are the constellations that are present at that point. And being able to click into these and learn more about, when it was first discovered, what the constellation, what its relevance is, and being able to stand where you're at and rotate around the horizon to be able to see all the different constellations that are normally sometimes difficult. So that takes into account where you're at, what you're looking at, the trajectory in which you're looking at the sky. Shazam is the other one where you're able to actually bring in audio information and actually through the sound input be able to quickly identify what song it is, and then at that moment you can pull up tons of associated information about that. I could actually buy it, I could say who wrote the song, who played an instrument on it. There's tons of background information. I could even find tour information for the actual band. But it's two different types. So you have visual input and audio input. And I believe they are working on, and haven't seen them down on the market yet, or at least a prototype, but my understanding is, if I'm research is correct, they're actually integrating smell into certain devices. So they'll be able to take particulate information and, based off sensors in it, be able to identify smell, which is actually in certain devices already available, but being able to add that into your smartphone is a whole new element. So I could actually, maybe like Shazam, if I liked a cologne or perfume or something, I could actually click it and be able to identify what brand that was, and then if I wanted to, I could buy it. So another one is portability. Again, this one's relevant at location. I'm sure you guys have probably seen the Kindle Reader, or a book, a video book, and the idea of being able to have information in what you're doing. I like the book because I'm in the kitchen and I'm trying to prepare a new meal, and I want to be able to see what are the preparation techniques, or it's more than just reading a recipe. I can get tips from the actual, the chef or the cook who donated the recipe, and be able to gather information about it. I can learn more about all the things that are the ingredients going into it. And then the thing about the Kindle Reader, which I really like, is that I can download a piece onto my iPad through my Kindle Reader. I can download it onto my Kindle. I can also download it to my laptop. And basically, it gives me a ubiquitous access to this. And as long as I'm connected to the base Kindle system, I can actually store where I was. So if I've got my smartphone and that's all I've got with me, and I can pick up where I last saved my book and start reading it with my smartphone if I don't have my iPad or my book, and I can actually carry a lot more books with me, and it's available at that moment. So again, it's about that relevant at location.
And Matt, I'll just add to that one. I'm an avid biker, and I spend a lot of time out on the road, and I now have a full repertoire on my phone of how to fix a broken chain and do all the kinds of things on a bike, and even just things when I'm home and I'm just tuning up the bike in the garage. I'll bring the iPad out or whatever I have, and just like the book in the kitchen, the ability for, to pause and start that video on how to tweak a wire or a cable with an expert giving me the guidance just in time is absolutely things I would never have attempted 2 years ago, and I always took it to the bike shop for $100. I'm now doing all my own in the garage.
That's a great example, and I think that gets back to, that meeting your need and allowing you to do what you need to do and perform within that, and that's, tying it back to that user adoption concept. It's bringing in all of those features to drive the most relevance or most value for you as a user. So one of the other things we look at is accessibility around performance support, and here's just two examples that we've worked with our partner clients and looking at, and looking at some of these, trying to drive at the point of performance. So the Jaguar app on the right-hand side is, so imagine you bought a new Jaguar, and you get the big 300-page manual on how to run your car, but all you want to do is figure out, how do I hook it by Bluetooth so I can basically drive hands-free and not get pulled over the first day I'm driving my car off the lot. So instead of actually trying to flip through and find some hand-drawn illustrations on how to do that, I can actually download the Quick Start Guide onto my iPhone, and then immediately be able to see a little video clip showing me how to do that in context in the car. So within 1, 2, 3, I'm starting as a consumer, starting to immediately get the value out of the acquisition that I had. So it gets back to that utility at that moment to show me how to quickly do that, rather than reading 3 or 4 paragraphs of information and then all the cautions and the considerations. I can actually get started immediately and being able to do that. So the other thing, another great example, which is the Lowe's tool, is the, and I think you guys may have seen this, it's a great app, but if you're a home improvement, you're taking home improvement projects and you want to be able to do your planning at home, thinking about your space, you go into the store, you're partnering with the person, the associate in the store, and being able to share and bring information around your project and what you're trying to accomplish, and have the associate be able to share information with you on, estimating the amount of materials that you need, or the all the things you would need to help complete your project, and including things like support demos, how to actually implement the use of the materials that you're buying, and so that you can have a complete experience. It's not about trying to sell a shovel or a hammer. It's about trying to support you in completing, as a consumer, your entire project from beginning to end. So these are two good examples. There are tons of them out there, and there are more being added every day. And I think the last one is really, again, another around accessibility, is providing instruction, and these are just examples of two courses where you can now access more of a full learning experience rather than a performance or some of the utilities we've talked about. But if you needed to take a course or find more information, now it's more portable, more accessible where you're at. And I think just kind of wrapping this, coming back to that around the user adoption strategy, is you got to kind of ask yourself as you're going through, how are you using and leveraging these features to drive relevance and utilization from the perspective of the learner or the performer.
And so I'll just just add one memorable story for me on the whole concept of the mobile devices. I do a lot of youth soccer coaching, and I took a team to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania for a tournament over a weekend, and they were 13-year-olds, and they all had these smartphones. They're old enough to have the smartphones, and they had them. And in between games, hours from home, I had nothing to do, so I took them to the battlefield and actually, put them on, a map-based system, and they actually reenacted some portions of the battlefield. GPS enabled, had highlights and pop-ups and all that kind of stuff. This is a graphic GPS-based example, and that was almost 3 years ago now. And when I see those kids at high school games and so on and so forth, I don't even think they remember whether or not we won the tournament or how we did, but they all remember reenacting, Pickett's Charge or whatever it was. So it made an impression on them, not just from an experience perspective, but they actually remember a little bit about the battle. So it actually goes a long way, like we're talking about, the relevance in the location. So, not to try to get back to an engineering type of approach here, but when you look at this slide, we spend a lot of time with customers and doing market analysis and talking to all the analysts. And, it's just like any other program that you would put forth within your organizations, is you have to define the mobile solution. So just, real quick, I'll just kind of reread through these questions. Where is it being accessed? What is the end goal? What is being accessed, right? And which device are you on, right? So if you think back to the Lowe's and the Jaguar apps, right? You might actually think those are kind of similar, but they're actually quite different, right? I'm a user and I want to tune my radio in the car versus, I want to redo my basement in Lowe's, right? So you would need to think through the design process for those two mobile solutions completely differently. And that's all we're suggesting here. And we have a lot of research from Forrester, who has done a great series on mobile. If you have advantage or can take advantage of that, they have a great series of how to take advantage of mobile and how mobile is the face of new employee engagement. And absolutely suggesting experimentation, right, with a pilot group. Get into that feedback, evaluate mode, and iterate the solution before you go broad to make sure you nail it. The key concept is that these phones are so pervasive and the bar has been set so high on the commercial and consumer end that inside the workforce, we're probably behind in what we're offering to our end users, but they're going to hold us to the same expectations. And Matt, you can go to the next slide here real quick.
I just wanted to piggyback real quick, and I think one of the things is when you really are trying to drive that adoption strategy, and this is just, and Eric, I know you and I were talking about this the other day, when we're having that first conversation sometimes with our partners, and the first contact comes out and says, what, I want to roll it out on an iPad, and I want to drive it out towards a device solution, and it's so then your adoption strategy shifts because now you're trying to get them to adopt to a device, but what we're often recommending, and when we come back with our consultation, is to say to start by answering all the questions around the periphery. And if you do those in a meaningful manner with your thinking about your learner and the performer at the end, that and then using those to shape what your solution is, your adoption strategy is going to be a much easier pathway than if you're not taking into account the key considerations around the learner or the performer, and thinking about what are they trying to do with this, what's their goals, and then thinking about what's the physical environment where they're actually going to be using this. I mean, the one example is counting penguins in Antarctica, and maybe an iPad is a great brilliant idea, because taking a laptop out there is not the most brilliant idea, but when you start to count penguins and you realize that, wait a minute, it's a touch screen, but all I've got gloves on, I can't enter it into that. That's going to limit your ability for them to adopt your tools. So I just want to take a second and kind of tie that back into thinking, why is that so important about really setting up your adoption strategy for success? So.
Yeah, and just to follow up, we definitely had some questions come in. So when you look at the slide, the word who is accessing, I think Matt just kind of addressed that. It's a great question, and I think in Matt's discourse there, each of these is being asked in perspective of the who. So absolutely, this doesn't suggest that you don't need to identify the learner performer, and we actually suggest the concept of personas, literally down to so for like the Lowe's example, for the way that a in-store agent would use that app versus a customer might use that app versus a manager might use that app, or the registrar might use that app. Those are 4 different personas that were looked at for that type of environment. So great question. Good feedback too. Is like that maybe the word who in here just needs to make sure that we address that. But each of these questions is asked per persona.
Yeah, with that who in mind. That's a really good point. I mean, I like that, but this is all about the who, or the who's, the multiple people that may be connecting and interchanging with this, or the roles to complete different elements of a workflow or work being done. So that's a great point. Great point. Okay.
All right. So real quick, what we want to do here is, we talked a lot about the mobile device in itself, and truly getting into using that device as the on the spot, in the location with relevance and all those kind of things. But sometimes your goal is truly just learning, and one thing we're definitely seeing is the advantage of how a mobile and agile workforce can take advantage of the mobility to enhance traditional learning programs, right? So we're all human. We learn over time, and when we build on a foundation. And with the mobile device, the ability to augment learning interventions, if you will, is just huge, right? So you think about, we all learn through reinforcement, through multiple modalities, and we all learn from each other, right? So if you just think about how that mobile device could be used for quick reinforcement and reflection capabilities, post-event commentary and quizzes and surveys to get people engaged with each other, and then again, the multiple modalities, being able to quickly hit a 90-second video after a day of instruction, or whatever the program had put into it, just that reinforcement over time via those different modalities, and how that improves the overcoming what we call the forgetting curve, as well as building upon those foundational elements, so that in the time of need, in a location away from potentially people they rely on desk to desk, a desk away, if you will, they can use that mobile device, much like that poor guy who was trapped in the hotel, who knew enough about first aid to understand, in a stressful situation, how to take care of a compound fracture, right? He had a foundation, but the performance support really enables him to kind of take care of himself for a few days. So I just want to drive that home. Mobile devices and those kind of constructs, how to use that to augment a learning environment over time. And then real quick, I think we have a couple scenarios that Matthew can run through here to kind of wrap up. Just do a quick time check, Kristen. We are at about 5 minutes left. I don't know when you want to pause for any other Q&A, or we'll just run through that. But I'll turn it back over to Matthew now.
And so depending on our time, we always kind of come up with a couple of scenarios. So I think just walking through a couple of ideas. So starting off with that same strategy around, who is the, what is the performance work going to be done? Where are they going to be doing it? Think of like an insurance claims adjuster, the who, after natural disaster. What would the design of your app or your structure support piece, what would it look like? And so thinking about, being able to provide rapid estimates, workflow support, accessing local resources like shelter information, what's the current status of that, what's the capacity of the different shelters in an area to help families find shelter. Where is it being accessed? Obviously in an area where natural disasters have struck, so maybe a pure Wi-Fi approach might not be the best idea, knowing that they would be able to have some other element of connectivity with information both resident on the devices and other, as well as that could be updated as technology is available or connections available. Thinking about all kinds of things, they could access, instruction, how to do something on a local process or on the fly, changes to their procedures of what they're doing to support the immediate area, information, support tools like estimation tools, capacity and resource for shelters, etc. The human network of all the people there supporting the environment. And then you could think about a smartphone or a tablet as traditional approaches. So we've got a couple of these where we kind of walk through and talk about this, but thinking as your design and your evaluation strategy you go through, trying to drive that end adoption. A couple of them, we talked about the home improvement associate assisting customers. We've talked about that a little bit already. Taking a look at the physician assistant leading patient education. I'm sure that we've all been in the doctor's office and they're seeing more and more patients in a compressed amount of time, and you've been told that, X, Y, or Z, and you need to work through this. And so how do you get more information and making sure that you can get the time and the information from your physician or your nurse practitioner as a patient in the right time at the right place where you need it. So these are apps that think about design-wise as you would go through that one. Another one is thinking about semi-retired employees supporting an expert network. So as we're looking at our boomer generation moving into the next phase of their work-life balance, thinking about how do you retain some of that connection to that brain power and being able to keep them to help solve some problems as they're employee emeritus. So these were just a couple of the examples to throw out to think about. If we had more time, we could probably work through as a group activity and do some brainstorming, but I think we wanted to be able to answer some questions. So just following up on a time check, how much time do we have for Q&A?
We have just a couple minutes now, so if anyone has a question at this time, feel free. You can do it through chat or you can hit #6 on your phone to unmute your line and ask that way. And I will go ahead and remind you that the slides and recording are going to be sent out to your email address that you provided. That should come out later this afternoon, and I'm also going to send out Matt and Eric's email via chat in case you have any questions following the webinar and you'd like to contact them. Okay, I am not seeing anything come through chat. Do you guys have anything you want to add to wrap it up?
Yeah, so just one quick thought. What we're seeing is there's been a study on all the commercial apps that we see out there. And, when you go out to the app stores, you can see the top grossing, top paid, and all those kind of things. And the interesting thing is that there's a direct correlation, obviously, with those that have been successful through crowdsourcing and stuff like that. But for all the apps across the board, those with the best marketing plans typically do the best. They engage with their markets and they engage with their users over time and repeatedly, not only on updates and features and stuff like that, but just engagement. And we're finding the same is true internally. Your app is going to compete with your employees' app library, if you will, for space and usage. So obviously, doing all the things we kind of talked about here in terms of ensuring user adoption. Don't forget the marketing and the communications and the feedback processes to engage with that community, just like you would with every other program.
And my final comment was just thanks for the opportunity to spend a little time with you guys. And if you have questions, please send them along.
Great. Thank you guys so much, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.